Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we return to session. My favorite subject, rules. Kick this off.
Want to take over?
Yes.
All right. Exhibit 7A in your book is Rule 21 NCAB 57A 045. We talked about this rule several times. What we're doing today is voting whether or not to commence rulemaking, which means start the process, get this thing published, send it out for public comment, set up a public hearing, and so forth. The timetable on all of these rules, if we vote to commence today, is such that it will be published in the Register on December 17th. The public hearing can be any time after January 1st. Comment period will end in February, and we can do the vote at the March meeting, whether or not to actually adopt these rules. Today, you only vote to expose them to the public while you're waiting for comment. And then at the end, you'll decide whether or not you want to adopt them, or you want to change some of the language, not a substantial change, but a little tweak to the language. From there, it goes to the Rules Review Commission. The earliest date it could possibly become effective if everything goes according to plan with no objections would be June 1st of 2019. So that gives you a quick rundown of the timetable. And what I'd like to do is take these by sections, A, B, and C. A is, as I said, 0405. On the second page of it is new paragraph H. This is one about the fee in the report. We've added that we permanently display the fee in the appraisal report, and also that the appraiser shall include a copy of the invoice for the assignment in the body of the appraisal report. One thing I checked up on since our last meeting, I checked with Anna and also counsel at the Rules Review Commission. If we expose this rule as is, the way we've got it here, and ultimately decide next year that you want to take out the invoice in the report, you can do that at that point. So you can expose it with both the fee and the report and the invoice, and then take out the invoice later if you choose to do that, or you could, today you can vote not to change it at all, change it by just adding the fee and not the invoice, or change it by adding both. So those are your options. And what I'd like to do, first of all, is answer any questions that you have, and then entertain some sort of motion to commence rulemaking in whatever fashion you choose.
May I ask you where this, I didn't hear exactly where this rule was located, what page is
It's
that?
on Exhibit 7A.
7A.
It's right after your disciplinary actions chart, which is Exhibit 6.
I see,
You
okay.
gotta look on the second page of that.
It's just the next page for the last.
Okay.
Section H.
And if you note, I had it underlined as July 1st to be effective. It actually could be June 1st, but I just threw a date in there. The one that would go to the Rules Review Commission would probably say June 1st.
Mr. Chair, what's appropriate now in terms of making comments about these, how we proceed here?
Yeah, this is time to talk about
This- are you
what you'd like to
discussing
do on this rule, yes.
on this rule? I originally I would just make a comment. I originally was in favor of this rule as written. However, since the time we wrote this, I personally have heard from a number of appraisers who are a little confused about the invoice. Why there's an invoice? We understand that this is for lender work. It isn't for, I'm doing work for Mr. Jones. That doesn't make any sense. I'm now of the opinion that we amend this just to have the fee stated in the body of the assignment, but not to require a copy of the invoice to be attached to it. There are too many of our clients that creates a problem for, it seems, logistically, maybe even the computer program, I don't know. So there's an issue on that side, and on the other side, some appraisers, particularly commercial appraisers, feel like it's an unnecessary burden. It's not much of a burden, but anyway, it's unnecessary. So that's my comment.
I'd like to speak to that. The actual statement says when an appraisal management company, right, engages an independent appraiser to appraise a 1 to 4 family residential dwelling, it's very narrow. And it speaks to only assignments that are coming through the agent of our clients. And in this particular case, yes, it may be an issue where why do they want us to duplicate sending in the invoice? The system, as it goes through the portal, is not going to pick up and scan and check the invoice. But if it's in the appraisal report, it acts as that second place, if you will, in an appraisal assignment a lot of times, where there has to be consistency in what is being charged and what is, the appraiser is stating to be charged and making sure that that invoice goes to the client and doesn't stop at the agency level.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of in public exposure, if it's gonna be read so quickly that the appraisal management company is overlooked and it just create a quagmire. That's all. Okay.
We also have 2 emails, one from Austin Smith saying it would be very burdensome to have to include a copy of the invoice. Many times an invoice is not even generated for the assignment, and if one is generated, it is difficult at best to have to include it as another page in the report. And then we have an email from Jared Bonner saying, agreed and second. Many of us do not send invoices currently, so this would just be another paper burden, increasing our time and also having to increase our fees for reports. Strongly oppose that portion as well. So I think that needs to come out.
And so the comment I would like to add from the reality of this as well, the appraiser stating the fee of the assignment is fine. We have other states that require that at this point. And I can tell you from the standpoint of where that's located, if you try to put an invoice into this, the invoice, again, how it moves when the appraisal moves to the portal and where it goes, this would be very burdensome for the appraiser and the AMC, and I don't think it adds anything to protect public interest. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, why is it limited to residential?
That's my same question. And I'd like to comment first because I feel like that if we're doing this for the public trust issues and for disclosure, probably eliminate the portion of the public that are getting an appraisal for a commercial property that is ordered by an AMC or an agent of the bank that's acting as an AMC.
Well, I think to answer Clay's point, the issue, as I understand it, and others may be able to address it better, is that because the AMC is taking a portion of the fee that the consumer pays, so if the consumer pays $600 for an appraisal, and then the appraiser only gets $400, the AMC is getting a portion of that. I think that's the only place where there's somebody in the middle between the appraiser and the borrower, or the user of the report. And that, the issue was that appraisers wanted that as for point of clarity. Right now, an AMC, there is a rule that says an AMC is prohibited, cannot stop an appraiser from putting a fee in the report. Anecdotal incidents are saying they can't prohibit you, but if you put it in, it causes some problems for the appraiser. And so the issue was mandated, as is done in other states. But the reason is transparency to the borrower who was originally the person who paid the fee. I hope I stated that correctly.
I think Go ahead, I guess, question from Mike, maybe you can.
I may misunderstood Mr. Taylor's comment or question, but my question then was, why are we just limited to the residential 1 to 4 and not including commercial appraisals when they order to an agency? Because I'll say again, but to me, if we're looking at disclosure of the fee, for the public to see where the money's going, which I think is part of it, is probably to limit that just to the members of the public that are ordering residential appraisals and not having commercial work.
I will, again, just address this, again, not one of those things that makes it wrong or right, but again, when this was originally vetted, given with the time frame, we were looking at 9 months, 12 months ago, we had a strong, I would say, a reason for us to do it anyway, but we had a strong backlash from the commercial community that a lot of them came in and spoke to the entire board, saying that they felt that was specifically between the client and them, and commercial appraisers had asked that they be excluded from commercial assignments. Again, it doesn't make it wrong or right that a change can be made. That's the basis, I believe, why staff doesn't have it this time. And again, please others that would be on board at the same time.
But that wouldn't affect when it was just between the appraiser and their client.
No, it's only because we're the benefits management company.
Yes.
Does any board member want to speak in favor of including invoice signage?
That would be my point. I think that to at least put this forward and give the opportunity for the public to speak on it, the agencies and stockholders in this particular situation, to their stakeholders, excuse me. But I think put it forward in its current form so that we can get the final input and make our decision at the time of the hearing. So I would, in fact, in the sake of the motion, I would do that. I'm making the motion that we put it forward in its current format, and then give us an opportunity to hash this out through the process.
Based on that, what you just said, and based on Bert's comments, that could be changed at a later date. I can withdraw my comments, and I'll second your motion.
Is there any other discussion? I think I should go on record as saying I oppose the inclusion of an invoice in assignment. But we have a motion and a second. I would say to move this forward and invoice them as it is. So I will ask for voting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we're gonna have to do a hand count, I'm not that good at this, so I'll ask one more time for all in favor of this, let's have a hand count rather than aye, in favor of. Those opposed? Nays, opposed? Have the nays, so what are we doing at this point? I'll ask my attorney.
I'll make another motion.
Okay, we need another motion.
I'll make a motion that we put forth that the appraiser shall include a copy of the invoice or the assignment within the body of the appraisal. I'm sorry, just
Delete the last
yes,
sentence.
delete the last sentence. Okay.
All right, we have a motion to that. Do we have a second? Second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion to delete the last sentence which states the appraiser shall include a copy of the invoice for the assignment, saying that we want the fee stated in the body of the assignment. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I think we have 3 nays, is that correct?
I should do hand count again.
Do a hand count again. All in favor? Hand count. All opposed?
die. I mean, the rule dies at this point.
So no motion on that. We can move on to B. Rules based on staff input. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rules. I'm on 7B on 0204, you'll see about in the middle of the page, we crossed out a sentence. And that's the only change. The rule was internally inconsistent because one place we said you can use upgrade courses for C, and another place we said you can't. So we just had to clean that up.
Mr. Roberta, can I ask a question, clarification? Based on our last vote of the rule, can another motion be made?
I suppose you could. You've already done a motion to include the invoice and a motion to not include the invoice. So it would have to be a different motion.
Okay.
And I would like to make a motion. And we leave it at the discretion of the appraiser to include the motion, to the invoice, but not have it mandated that it's excluded.
To say that they may include a copy of the invoice?
That probably would not pass muster with rules review staff. They would consider that as arbitrary, and they would say, so under what circumstances would it be required or not required?
Or that I will not make a withdraw.
If the subject is closed, we need to move on.
Well,
That's fair, that's fair.
well, all due respect, Mr. Chairman, we put a lot of time and effort into this rule, and if I were to vote again, I would vote differently, and I realize I can't vote on the same motion. Is that correct? Roberta?
You could do a motion to reconsider, so the board would have to decide whether or not you want to open vote it again on this
And
issue.
only, and under parliamentary procedure, only a person who voted on the prevailing side of the motion can make a motion to reconsider.
But we don't have one of those.
But at the prevailing side, like if the motion was lost, it would be the person who voted against the motion.
Okay.
Who's on first?
So that-
Who's on first?
So that would be me, and
Depends on which motion. Did you vote?
If you vote, if you're talking about the second motion, one of the 5 of you to vote against, it would have to raise the issue.
I'm one of the 5, and I make a motion that we reconsider this voting on this rule
Without the paragraph.
without the
The last.
Without that sentence.
I'm sorry, without sentence, I apologize.
without the last sentence. I make a motion that we reconsider.
A second.
Okay, I understand it, and item H, we're making a motion and a second to conclude the paragraph.
To reconsider.
Just
Reconsider.
If you vote affirmatively, then you'll have another motion to put that motion before you again. So first you have to most of you have to agree that you want to reconsider, so that's.
Okay,
So the vote will be, you'll ask for a show of hands for people who want to reconsider that original motion.
thank you. So that's the vote. So, all right, so let's take a vote on that and do a show of hands on reconsideration. We have a second vote. 4. Those opposed, please raise your hands.
5. So you can't reconsider.
So I feel that we can move on at this point.
I think we can. Let's move on to back over to 0204.
Was that page or item number?
It says page
18?
1 on the rules for some reason.
What number is that?
0204. It says 7B.
70.
So that's the first change. The second page is on page 4 of that exhibit 0211. The change here is right now we require a letter of good standing from people, and we would switch that over to joining the prison subcommittee's national registry instead of making appraisers jump through hoops and get a letter from their home state. Some states don't even offer them anymore, some states take 6 months, 2 months to get them. It's a real burden on people who are coming in here for reciprocity, so that's that change. The third change is on the 407, at the very last sentence, adding that only one trainee may receive credit for providing significant assistance. Trainee can only get credit if they provide 75% worth of the work on an appraisal report, and unfortunately, we're seeing circumstances where a couple of trainees seem to think they did 75% of the work on the report, so we need to clarify that. And then the other two changes are simply wording, in 03 and 06, we require instructor, if we ask them to submit a videotape or DVD of their teaching, and we're just changing that to recording because we're more than willing to consider like YouTube or Facebook or however you want to do it and get it to us and stream it, that's fine, so we're just changing that word. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rules that we're asking you to vote to commence rulemaking on. So we entertain a motion to commence rulemaking on those rules.
Do we have a motion?
I move.
To commence?
Second.
Accept these.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Commence rulemaking on these 5. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next set of rules is Exhibit 7C. These 3 rules all pertain to complaints against prison management companies. 57C or 101 form of complaint states that complaints against prison management companies will be processed in accordance with the rules that follow on the next few pages. So we should address those 2 new rules first to decide whether or not we want to change the 101 at this point. As you may remember, there was discussion last year and early this year about complaints against prison management companies and going further than just the company itself, but starting to look to complaints against owners, officers, partners, directors, and so forth, and opening complaints against them. It's a novel concept. It's not done in any other state, but it's something that we wanted to look at. And we spoke with Anna here about how we could do something like that and what's the best way, and she advised the board that we needed to do rulemaking if we wanted to look at opening a complaint against anybody except the entity itself. And this is our attempt to do so. The first rule would say when we first get the complaint, it would be open against the company, but if there's a subsequent complaint after a hearing decision or consent order and it's the same issue, then we'll also open a complaint against partners, officers, directors, what's now the compliance manager, and anybody who owns more than a 10% interest. I will say that one of the things we are anticipating doing, and we'll probably talk about after we're done with this, are potential statute changes. And some of those changes could affect even the way that these rules would be worded. And so we might want to consider that when we're looking at these rules, whether or not this is the time to do them, or whether we should wait until the AMC statute is amended and then do our rulemaking in conformance with that. So if we decided that we want to go forward with these rules, we certainly could. And at least we could certainly expose them, and by the time we get around to March, we may have a better idea of where our statute changes are going. And we can always ultimately vote not to adopt them at the end. So this obviously is your choice, but so questions about these rules?
So you're suggesting it would be in our best interest to table this until we see what the statute changes?
No.
Well, I think that you should think about it. If the statute is changed in some way to deal with, like say, compliance manager, and that's their terms changed, or if there's some structure to the way that discipline is done, I don't know. Once you put something downtown, who knows what's going to happen to it? It's not something that this board is taking a position on and telling them that you need to change the AMC statute, except in those areas that have to be changed in accordance with federal law. But I'm concerned about running the rulemaking, then turning around and having to do temporary rulemaking on top of the current rulemaking, and actually, I'm not concerned, but your counsel would be concerned about that issue.
And just to, if I may echo what we're I may echo what Roberta just said. Certainly, if you do vote to start rulemaking now, and your public comment periods will extend through early February, correct?
Probably extend to our public hearing, which would be in March.
Okay, so it would extend through March. At any time, if there's new statutory language, if you receive a huge number of volume of public comments that would indicate to you we need to pull back and approach this in a different way, whatever the reason, at your March meeting, you can simply vote not to proceed with rulemaking and basically stop it right there. So I wanted to let you know that if you do decide to pursue it now, you have the ability to stop it before it gets to the end of the process.
For clarity, is it a fair statement to say that this goes along with the statute that's currently on the books, right? Also, just so that everyone in the room knows, when was that statute, when did it become effective?
January 1st of 2011.
So this statute has been out there, in January will be 8 years. It has actually been on the books. And has there been any sufficient pushback over the last 8 years to make those changes in the wording?
Which changes?
Changes that go along with this particular bill?
The big change here is we have been opening complaints solely against the entity, the Prison Management Company. The concern was expressed last year, early this year, about whether or not we could pursue a complaint against others in the company besides, because there is some language in our statute about being able to fine or to join the activities of people as opposed to just the company.
And the language in the statute is, I'm not gonna say it's vague, but it says person who owns an interest or participates in the business. And so that can mean many different things to many different people. So the purpose of, I believe the purpose of rulemaking was to clarify that if you were going to require yourselves to open a complaint against persons who own an interest or who participate in the business, you were going to clearly describe them so that this segment of the population knows that they are exposed and within your definition of owning an interest or participating in the business. So that was where this came from, and my recommendation to you, if you are going to, if it is your choice to pursue these people, you need to describe exactly what that means, because it can mean different things to different people in the corporate law.
Along with that, does that section that has the state of North Carolina put into place, does that not mirror the earlier Dodd-Frank look at structure and how these agencies were supposed to be, I'll say, part of the application process? These were things that the licensing board was to check on and monitor as a point of obtaining their license. So in other words, if any one of those members that were stated, were they not held liable for updating their license? And so I guess what I'm saying is trying to tie it in. This has been on the books for an extended length of time. And if there has not been sufficient push to change it statutorily, then from my perspective, I think we should at least address it now. We've had, I know from personal knowledge from in the past, over the past 5.5 years, we've had several appraisers and maybe organizations that had interpreted this, that this was supposed to have been, we were supposed to have followed this for the last 8 years. And yes, maybe there's some confusion when we didn't have the rules on the books, but I think for me, I would prefer to go ahead and start with this, since we have sufficient time to go through the process, and if there's changes when the General Assembly meets back in the first year, and there looks like there's going to be some changes to the statute itself, then we have, quite honestly, the opportunity to change the language in this.
I'd like to add that we discussed this for the longest period of time, and we need to move this forward. Today, in my opinion, is for some of our new members, a lot of this arose when AMC was disbanded and leave appraisers without being paid fully. So the question was, how can you go to these people who just decide all of a sudden we're not going to be at AMC anymore and leave appraisers hanging outstanding invoices? So I don't know if there's any more discussion, but if there isn't, I move that you're going to.
Vote to commence rulemaking on these three rules, is that your wording?
Yes, that's my word. You took it right out of my mouth.
That's unusual.
I will second that for further discussion.
I have one point of clarification, if I may. We're going to do in section 8 a possible statute changes. One of them in there is moving the designation compliance manager to controlling person. And will we be in a position, what was the time frame on changes again? Because we actually have compliance manager in 502. So we can correct that, we can be able to make that change.
Well, I think if the statute is changed, that'll give us a basis for a temporary rulemaking. If they remove compliance manager and replace it with controlling person, that's clear direction from the legislature.
Yes.
And then we could do a temporary rulemaking to change that. Temporary rulemaking is not easy. You have to do a permanent rulemaking and a temporary at the same time, so it's double work, but it can be done.
Right, but what is the time in March?
Yeah, well, legal voting
What
March.
would you anticipate?
The end of March, I believe if you look at your calendar, I think it's the 26th, would be your board meeting where you will vote to, formally vote to adopt or amend your rules. And I don't know if we'll have any indication of what the legislature is going to do at that point.
And if you don't have any indication what the legislature is going to do, if you still wanted to proceed with rulemaking at that time, you do. And if it goes through without a problem at rules review, it takes effect in June, and then all of a sudden, in late June, you've got a completely different statutory change, then you just proceed with temporary rulemaking based on the new statute. I mean, it happens. You can't let any potential statutory changes hold up the business of the board.
Yeah, well, that's a small point, but it points to the possibility of other change.
I believe we have a motion on the floor. Is there more discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, as I understand it, the AMC is required to post bond.
Yes.
Who is the beneficiary of the bond?
Technically, the appraisal board is, but it would be any claim that falls under the board's statute. So, for example, if somebody didn't get paid by an AMC, they could post against that bond and get paid.
So then the appraiser who hasn't been paid has an avenue to get paid through the bond.
Yes, up to $25,000.
That's up to.
It's a $25,000 bond.
Total for the year or total for the entirety of the bond or what?
It's a one-year bond.
1 year.
We have some relevant experience on how that's been used. Can you refresh our memory?
I think a company that paid 25 cents on the dollar when they went out of business, and I think it was less than $6,000 was claimed on that bond from North Carolina appraisers. That doesn't mean that there's more money outstanding, it's just those for the people. And we sent an email to every appraiser in the state informing them how to file a claim on the bond.
My next question is, whose responsibility is it to find these people who would be liable for payment of outstanding invoices before you go through with what we're talking about. This is like running down a rabbit hole to me, and a potential big legal cost to the board to try to pursue such a thing. I think I would totally be against going with language to try to define who could be pursued once an ANC is disbanded. I think that is an individual issue with the appraiser and the ANC, the former ANC, through the courts, and not through us. We're asking for the bond already, so that's what we have done. It is in the statute. It's known, but the other is not known. And it's vague to me, and I don't think it should be in at all.
Mr. Taylor, part of that, from that last case that Gillette has talked about, is in the way the bonds are set up currently. The bond company can cancel the bond basically, when I say this, whenever they wish. It's not quite that simple, but if they have the opportunity at the to cancel it like within 90 days of when they are supposed to be making payments to appraisers. A lot of times, that's what happened in the last case. And it wasn't a case of bankruptcy, as far as we know. It was the ANC, which was out of state, in the West Coast. The two owners were husband and wife. So they, in the middle of the divorce proceeding, apparently, decided that they were just going to close down the ANC business. And so when they started making the offers to some of the appraisers, and in some states, the lender, the client, is still on the hook, depending on the agency agreements. These folks started offering 25 cents on the dollar. There were some appraisers that filed a complaint, said, no, we want our money that the lenders, the clients, have already paid, according to the agreement. And by the time they got into the collection process, we got the heads up that the bond company was able to pull the plug on the bond. And in the cases that brought this bond issue into play, we had some appraisal firms, if you will, that had as much as 50, 60, 70,000 out to a particular ANC. Now, does that make good business sense? No, it doesn't. But it was there, and that was sort of the reasoning for this bond. If anything, we probably should be looking at making that bond more reasonable, higher, but also according to the federal language, excuse me, and the state language that's been on the books for so long. This wording here is giving us the opportunity to say, this is what the legislature directed us to do, and it's what the feds have directed us to do in the past. So that's sort of the reasoning and the history behind this.
Just to add to that, when AMCs first came into existence, there was a debate as to whether they would be regulated, who they would be regulated by. At the federal level and the state level, it was assigned not by banks, not by others, but by individual appraisal boards. So, like it or not, we are obligated with regulation of management companies just like we are with appraisers. From a practical standpoint, if you take a typical residential appraiser, he's not going to have the resources to retain an attorney, legal advice, or whatever you would need for a couple $1,000 or something like that. That would just go away. And it's just a matter of identifying a person or persons within this AMC group that you can go to and hold them liable if they just up and decide we're not paying our bills. That's a short version of the history and how long we've been talking about this.
I understand all of that, but it still puts the board in a position of real exposure. I don't know how to express it other than that, and I think it's not a correct position for the board to get into to run this racket, as I have already put it. It's not our business. It's up to the individual appraiser who is contracted to do a job, to keep up with things, to get paid on a timely basis. We've already talked about it for 30 days. And with this proposed new language, it's just the opportunity to a quagmire, and I would not support it.
I will point out a couple of things. First of all, that even if we do this, we don't have the authority to order an appraisal management company to pay fees. And we cannot collect fees on behalf of an appraiser. Any money that the board collected as a fine or penalty goes to the state. We don't keep that. The other issue that came up, Anna had addressed this with the board back in February, are the issues of jurisdiction. Most of these companies are located out of state, and if we're going after individuals in other states, there would need to be probably some statute changes to require those individuals to submit to the jurisdiction in North Carolina. So there are, as you point out, some issues that come in actually enforcing this. We can do a complaint, we can have a hearing if the people, assuming they don't even lawyer up and they don't show up, we have an order of a fine and trying to collect that, and how much any nature of resources is the board willing to expend to go out and get that fine that will go to the state. That being said, there is wording in our statute that we are able to impose a civil penalty on an officer, partner, director, compliance manager, and so forth. And I think this is an attempt to say this is how we're going to do that, because we can't have a case against an AMC and then say, oh, and by the way, we're going to fine the owners and we're going to fine this, that, and the other, without putting them on notice that we're doing that sort of thing. That's how we got to this point. Whether or not we should go any further, that's up to you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that we've already gone too far, and I would not like to see us pursue or enhance the pursuit of this new language.
Your point is taken, but I believe we had a motion on
We
it.
do.
And can I have a review on those? Who made the original?
I made a motion to proceed and with the language as written on these particular items, and given us ample opportunity for the legislature to convene, and if there's going to be any changes to the language, we can make that at that time.
And I second that.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, let's vote on that with the understanding that we can't change that. Now, we need to. So, all in favor of the motion? Do you want to restate it, please, for clarification?
Clarification, yes, I make the motion that we proceed with the language as written
On all three rules?
on all three rules.
On all three words. And you have the second? You have the second, sir. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Let's do a hand count. All in favor, please hold up your hand. All opposed? Motion has failed.
Absolutely astounding.
legislative changes. We have been looking at our statute, knowing that we have to go in anyway. As you know, we got a 1-year extension on our AMC program from the subcommittees, because we have to make some changes to come into conformity with the policy statements. So since we're going there anyway, we started looking at some of the other issues in our statute that needed to be changed. I tried to get it down to the bare minimum, knowing that once things get in the hands of the legislature, anything can happen. So the possible changes for, we have one in this. Do they have the AMC statute changes in their books?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I must have pulled it out myself now. All right, sorry about that. All right, so the possible changes for the appraiser, there are 2 sets of things. One would be in 93E2-2 to amend the legacy, section 2 is the AMC statute. We need to change it to change the exception. Right now, we have an exemption for state and federally chartered banks and so forth. The federal law is only for federally regulated financial institutions. So that was out of compliance, that needs to be changed. And by adding that, we had to add in definitions of federally regulated management companies and institutions. The other change that staff has been looking at that we put in here is essentially to change compliance manager to controlling person. Currently, a compliance manager essentially just needs to be an appraiser that's certified in this or any other state, period. In many companies, the compliance manager is an employee. They don't have any particular management functions. Most states, if not all other states, use the term controlling person and define that as somebody who is an owner, an officer, director, or somebody who possesses the power to direct or cause a direction of the company. In other words, somebody with skin in the game, as opposed to an employee. And it makes sense to staff that you have somebody who's supposed to be in charge of the program and making sure they're in compliance with state laws, that there's somebody there who has the power to actually change things instead of somebody sitting in an office somewhere. So definition of controlling person is not required by federal law. It is something that the staff proposes. The other statute changes in 2-4 and qualifications for registration include the change to compliance manager. There's also a change about, currently the statute says that fees have to be paid to appraisers within 30 days. We have at least one appraisal management company who was reading that very closely and saying, but if the invoice is coming from an appraisal company, we don't have to pay within 30 days because the statute says to appraisers. To close that loophole, I would say that we could amend the statute to say that fees for appraisal assignments have to be paid in 30 days and leave it there. But that's not required by federal law. The change that is required by federal law is the part that every AMC and all those other people has never had a license to act as an AMC or an appraiser refused, denied, canceled, or revoked by any other state. We didn't have that second part. That is required except for, again, the controlling person. 2-5 is changing compliance manager to controlling person. 2-6 is adding the collection of the registry fees from appraisal management companies. We did change our rule that say that appraisal management companies on renewal have to send in the fee, but we didn't have a section anywhere in our statute that allowed the board to collect fees from appraisal management companies that are not registered with us and then pass that on to the National Registry. The only people that don't have to register with us would be those federally regulated institutions. I think there's probably about 2 in the country, but we needed a mechanism in our statute that would allow us to collect that fee and send it on. In prohibited acts, the things that we did not have in our statute relate to the fact that an AMC cannot require or try to require an appraiser to perform an appraisal if the appraiser has an interest in the property or the transaction, making that prohibited. And So keeping the appraiser out, making sure that we've assured appraiser independence from the transaction itself. And in disciplinary authority, there were two sections that we didn't have in there that most other states have. I don't know how they didn't get in there, but one is if an AFC is disciplined in another state, there's no mechanism in our statute to also consider opening a case here based on that other state's action. We have that for appraisers, we don't have it for AMCs. And I think we've discussed many times over the past few years that we want to be somewhat equal in the way that we look at these two. This would bring that equal. The other thing is that we have a section in our appraiser statute that says all of the documents received as a result of an investigation are not public records. I'm not saying they're confidential, they're just not public records and people can't walk in and just look through files. We don't have that in the AMC section either. So we would add that to become in conformity with the appraisal section. I know those are a lot of changes. These are the baseline ones, especially the federal law ones that we need. And I think what we would propose doing is drafting those out so that you can see them. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you were talking about potentially putting together people that would work with staff when the legislature does come into session to see what we could do to get bills introduced and have somebody that could respond if we're downtown and they've asked us to make a decision on something. We want to call somebody. Don might be able to address that further, but there are some broad changes, there are some narrow changes. And I'm not sure how you want to proceed from here, but I think these are the things I think that we should do. There may be others that you think need to be tweaked in our statute, and if so, you should let us know.
You address the ATV.
Oh, the other thing we could talk about is on page 8. This is also a legislative change. It's the change in the ATV criteria. Yeah. And you'll see two potential statute changes that are on page 1 behind that exhibit 8, changing to all ATV criteria and then allowing reciprocity. Right now, a reciprocity statute is you have to be in or exceed our North Carolina requirements before we let you in. So if you get licensed in Virginia and you come in under the new ATV criteria, we will not let you in under reciprocity. We probably have about the highest requirements in the country at this point, I think, for all levels of licensure. And this would say, as long as you're good in your home state, you can come here. And so that would change it. So the big question is, what are we going to do with the ATV criteria? I can tell you as a staff, we're getting questions at least weekly, if not daily, asking us what we're going to be doing with this. I did a little bit of a study on it. I guess I lost it already, but I believe about 35 of the 35 or 36 states are going to all straight ATV criteria. They're just going to the federal minimums. And the way we would write the statute change, if you chose to go that way, would be all federal minimums.
So what you're really saying, if we don't adopt the ATV criteria, we're going to create ourselves a law. And
There would be a lot of issues if we try to do something different from the ATV criteria. My understanding is there are 2 states that are keeping with the 2015. There are about 35, I brought the statistics, but I don't know where to start from. 35 or 36 are all ATV, about 6 are going with changes in education but not experience. Every time, or did I get that backwards?
Except for the 2 states that are just choosing not to act at this time. It's my understanding based on what Roberta's told me that there's no state that has looked at it and made a decision to change that has kept the education requirement where it is. That what they are keeping in place is some of the experience requirements. So in other words, the ones that have addressed it and actually taken action are getting rid of the college degree and going to all the options that are for being a for equivalency to a college degree. And so that's that's where the other states are. I mean, the problem that is certainly from a staff perspective is if you have, somebody comes in and there's somewhere and we don't allow reciprocity, now we're trying to measure up, okay, what do you have? Do you have enough hours? Do you have enough time? And we have to have all that documented properly. Obviously, they're trying to get reciprocity. They don't start out sending us enough. And then we come in and trying to backfill it. And it is a serious violation of the policy statements in the subcommittee if we don't have a smooth reciprocity process. I mean, you can hold them to a higher standard, but if you slip up, there are issues, and that's our concern.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, I'm at the risk of putting all this in jeopardy, but just asking a question on the original part of the statute changes for the ANC, and I see need for probably both from the criteria and I guess it's qualification criteria, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just kind of thinking of part of the section that we just got through discussing and voting on. When it comes to the wording controlling person and also the appraiser, the licensed appraiser that's in place. I agree, we spoke about it in the last section, we can't collect the money. Right? And that was not really the overall viewpoint of why we are here to find these particular individuals. It all comes down to the licensing part of it. And when I spoke earlier, in this particular case, having a licensed or certified appraiser being a compliance officer, the intent was that that person is responsible for making sure that that company is following the state licensing requirements in all the jurisdictions that they're doing business. And in the cases where the ANCs are doing review work, they would have at least someone that's responsible at the helm that can say, the appraiser is following USPAC, or in this case, maybe even the appraisers on staff for the ANC, so that you have someone there that rather than fining them, their license are in jeopardy. And becoming part of the group in the ANC so that it comes up for re-upping their license for the upcoming year. This board then has the authority to say, you're not following the rules. We can suspend you, we can do all those things that are talked about in the regulations federally and by the state. So I tend to hope that we would continue having either the controlling person or their compliance manager, that they have someone that's responsible for day to day that holds a license in the state that they're operating as an appraiser. Because that's the most logical way the public's going to be protected. And that company, or small company, if you will, has skin in the game in the state.
Yeah, I'm gonna do something a little dangerous and ask a question in open session that because I wasn't anticipating the way you went. But my understanding is they just have to be licensed or certified in a state.
Right.
It doesn't have to be here. So we have no actionable that we can take against that anyway. I mean,
but as I understand
it,
that's the route that the thing was headed down originally, and it was
right. It stopped short of
that. It's required to be licensed in the states, and I understand that, but at least if you have an appraiser.
Right.
And in that way, there could be, even a complaint, per se, filed in the state that they do have licensing. So, that's a hope. I'm not saying that I will make any kind of motions to proceed, I don't think you're looking for that in this case.
Just for a point of clarification, attorneys, if we were to move to this controlling person, what is, are they still obligated, are they appraisers? Do we
Control
know?
person would not have to be an appraiser if the statute were to change. It could be, but most of these agencies that we're talking about, I'd say probably 80–90% are corporately owned. You're not finding, except, I mean, there's a few here in North Carolina that are owned by appraisers, but I'm not really seeing that anymore. I'm following the chains as they're being sold and going through all their corporate documents, and they're being bought and bought by bigger and bigger companies and subsidiaries, and following their initials and who really owns them has been rather interesting. So as a model, you're not really seeing that. I mean, what I'm seeing is if a compliance manager is an appraiser and they're seeing trouble with the company, they're quitting. They're just sending in a notification that they're no longer the compliance manager. Then I have to go to the company and say, you need to have one in 10 days. But since they're essentially employees with no ownership interest, and although they have the responsibility, they don't necessarily have the authority to direct what's going on with the company. The requirement that they have that responsibility. They can easily walk away because they don't have an ownership interest or a position.
And I think whether the role, going back to Mr. Benson's question, is whether there's a role for a compliance manager that has a license that still needs to be there, is probably the thing is they don't have the control to where they should be held financially accountable. It's more, yeah, I can see maybe some of the questions about compliance accountability, but the financial liability when they don't make the decisions, that's kind of the disconnect in the different statutes. So it may be once the wordsmithing starts in the legislature that it doesn't totally go away, but they're both clearly defined, the difference between a controlling person and a compliance.
Does that address
Yeah, yes, sir.
any other board members would like to comment? So
the major policy change really is the NCAB criteria. And that's the one that needs to be debated, it may not today, maybe into January meeting, but it's a decision that you have to make that the staff can't make. Because you have to be able to tell the legislature it is the board's position now.
Right. We have to take something and then let the chips fall where they may.
we have until January meeting.
They go back into session the end of January, but I think the bill introduction will be probably another month or so after that, I would think.
The AQB has gone from one extreme to the other. And I hate to see it dumbing down once again in a fashion is what's happening. I understand we need to be in sync with the rest of the world, but we've always held ourselves to be a step above North Carolina.
Can I ask, Mr. Rogers, you mentioned earlier that there was 2 states that had already said what was in mind to do this. What were those states?
My understanding, New Hampshire and Rhode Island.
So very small. And do